Next session start. Yes. So we shall proceed with the second presentation, the second session of the day. That is a free guest lectures presentation. I kindly invite Dr. Shri Ranglakshmi Madam to take on the stage and kindly introduce the speaker, Madam. Dr. Ranglakshmi Madam. Dr. Ranglakshmi
Hello,
Madam.
hello.
Madam, I invite you to take on the stage and invite the speaker, Madam.
Okay, okay. Good morning to all. Am I audible?
Madam, you're audible, Madam.
Now I welcome you all for the first guest lecture session of this AP Neurocon. I invite our speaker, Professor K. Venkateswarlu. He is the Emeritus Professor of Neurology, Andhra Medical College, Visakhapatnam. Good morning, sir. Welcome. I welcome you.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
My slides are visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just
Okay.
I'll introduce you for a few
Please.
seconds.
Please carry on.
Sir did his MBBS and MD from Andhra Medical College, and he did his DM from Sri Chitra Institute of Medical Sciences. He worked as assistant professor and then became the professor and also the vice principal of Andhra Medical College. He was ex-member of editorial board of IAN and reviewer of IAN journals. He has so many publications to his credit. And he started DM neurology course in Andhra Medical College in 2002, and the seats were enhanced from 1 to 3 in 2010. He has given so many orations in various conferences and had publications in so many journals. He was the ex-member of editorial board of IAN and reviewer of IAN journal. Welcome you, sir. He is going to deliver a lecture on non-convulsive status epilepticus.
Okay, I'll start.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, all of you. Thank you, organizers, for this wonderful opportunity. I will be dealing with the non-convulsive status epilepticus for the next 30 minutes or so. Non-convulsive status epilepticus is a rather difficult condition to recognize and difficult to treat. And all the neurologists should be equipped with the knowledge to recognize and treat them promptly. So in ILA 1983 defined status epilepticus as a condition characterized by an epileptic seizure that's sufficiently prolonged or repeated so as to produce an unvarying and enduring epileptic condition, which probably means that the seizures have lasted for sufficiently long time that the natural termination is not possible. And in 2015, ILA redefined the status epilepticus and has given 2 time points, time point 1 and time point 2. Time point 1 refers to the duration of the seizure, where natural termination is not possible. And then unless some intervention is done, the seizures are not going to stop. And 10.2, where beyond which if the seizures continue, some kind of brain damage is inevitable. And then these are the time points for each. These time point 1 and 2 are probably different for each type of seizure. And for tonic status epilepticus, time point 1 is 5 minutes and probably time point 2 is 30 minutes. And for complex partial seizures, in the present yearly terminology called impaired consciousness, it is time point 1 is 10 minutes and time point 2 is probably more than 60 minutes. For absence status epilepticus, time point 1 is 10 to 15 minutes, and probably we do not know whether absence status prolonged will cause a brain damage. So this actually status epilepticus is classified into convulsive status epilepticus and probably non-convulsive status epilepticus. And this is a convulsive status epilepticus. Non-convulsive status again has 3 major subcategories. The first one is the post-convulsive non-convulsive status epilepticus, which means patient had a convulsive status, and then but patient did not regain consciousness even after adequate anticonvulsants, and the EEG continues to show abnormal epileptiform discharges, and then the condition is quite serious, should be treated on the same lines as convulsive status epilepticus. The other two types of non-convulsive status epilepticus, again, depending on whether the patients are ambulatory or whether the patients are in coma. Those in the ambulatory status, a typical example is absence status epilepticus. And then the typical example for the critically ill comatose patients are patients in the ICU. And then they are often either for neurological or non-neurological illnesses, they are usually in the ICU. And then they're very critically ill, and then they carry a very serious prognosis. So ILD has classified status epilepticus and has taken 4 axes into consideration. One is semiology, other is the etiology, third is the age, and 4 is the age. So the semiology classification is, of course, one is the with prominent motor symptoms. This is called convulsive status. Convulsive status could be either generalized clonic status, myoclonic status, or if it is partial focal motor status, it is epilepsy, partial is continue, and other types. So our consideration today is the one without prominent motor manifestations. This non-convulsive status motor patients are without coma. And as I told you, these patients are often seriously with underlying medical or neurological illnesses, or sometimes following the status epilepticus, convulsive status epilepticus, from which they did not recover. And then non-convulsive status without coma is either absence status, atypical absence status in generalized epilepsies. In focal epilepsies, it is either aura, epilepsy aura, or ephesic status. Again, it could be with impaired consciousness, as you see in complex partial status. There are some boundary syndromes like epileptic encephalopathy, Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, where we do not know whether the patient's altered mental status and then the EEG correlate or not. Similarly, patients who are comatose, who have evolving non-evolving epileptiform abnormalities, behavioral disturbances with epilepsy, we are not sure whether they can be called a status because we do not do a relationship between their behavior and then the EEG abnormalities. The second axis is the etiology. The etiology of status epilepticus is a very long etiology. A long list could be symptomatic or cryptogenic. And then in the etiology, symptomatic etiology, this could be acute like in stroke or intoxication, or it could be remote related to the past history of trauma, encephalitis, or stroke, or could be progressive neurodegenerative disorders. So ILD has a long list of etiologies, including strokes, infections, neurodegenerative disorders. Time does not permit to me go through the entire list, but this is all the long list. And then the third axis is the EEG. Depending upon whether the abnormalities are generalized or localized, and whether the periodic discharges are related to delta. Again, depending upon the morphology, whether they're short or not, and then whether they're time related, including the frequency, prevalence, duration, etc. Modulation, whether they're stimulation use or spontaneous, and the effect of intervention, whether the intravenous medication will abort the EEG abnormalities. The fourth axis, of course, the age, as all of us know, that most of the epilepsy syndromes are age related, and then they are specific to certain age groups, and each type of syndrome can have its own status. Like, for example, neonates can have Otara syndrome, and then subsequently Dravet syndrome, various childhood epilepsy syndromes, and syndromes that can occur in adult onset and also elderly, and all of them can have their own status. So then we have various forms of status epilepticus. This is actually one most important classification is convulsive and non-convulsive status. Convulsive status is generalized chronic or myoclonic, and focal status is epilepsy or partial discontinue. But what concerns us today is the non-convulsive status. It could be again either generalized or partial. Among generalized, we have the absence status, classical absence. And the non-classic generalized non-convulsive status to those patients with systemic illness who are in coma. And the non-convulsive status includes complex partial status, which in the present terminology called focal onset seizures with altered awareness. Or there could be focal status non-convulsive with dyscognitive features. These patients are fully conscious but have focal neurological deficits. So let us look at the non-convulsive status epilepticus. So basically, to call a patient having non-convulsive status, there should be an ongoing epileptic seizure activity for at least 30 minutes without major motor manifestations. They must be having clinically some deficit, either usually in the form of alertness or cognition like aphasia, or they are confused. And though it's called non-convulsive, some kind of motor manifestations like automatisms, blinking, and myoclonus are acceptable. So by definition, they should have a diminished level of consciousness or responsiveness or other neurological deficits. EEG should show a discrete or continuous epileptiform abnormalities, and they should be responding to anticonvulsants both clinically and EEG wise when they're treated with intravenous, probably anti-epileptic drugs like lorazepam. So status epilepticus, again, now we'll come back to the non-convulsive status epilepticus in patients who are ambulatory. These are, though difficult to recognize, they're relatively easy to treat, and then their outcomes are usually good. And so the very well known is the absence status epilepticus. That's often children with a prior history of absence, myoclonic seizures or convulsive seizures. A child is often confused and then awake, often blinking, and then there can be an occasional myoclonus. Unrecognized, this can go on for a number of days and recurrent. And typically either starts or ends with a generalized chronic seizure. They can be precipitated by infection, trauma, sleep deprivation, metabolic change, or medication withdrawal like benzodiazepines or some hyperventilation. And this is the man who is 24 years who has been having a past history of absence seizures. He was typically confused for the last 1 day, and then he showed a continuous run of 3 cycles per second spike and wave discharge. And then again another de novo absence status, which occurs in elderly, unlike the typical absence status. These are the older patients who don't have a prior history of epilepsy, and then often they are on benzodiazepines for sleep or anxiety, and then suddenly stopping benzodiazepines to reduce their status. And their EEG typically shows rapid rhythmic and generalized discharges, and this is called the DO absence status, absence status of late onset. It could be either idiopathic generalized epilepsy without earlier manifestations, or some may be responsible secondary generalized due to they have past history of stroke, and then again superadded that there is a benzodiazepine withdrawal. So this is that 58-year-old woman who never had epilepsy or a known seizure and presented with confusion. EEG typically shows the spike and wave discharges. And then let us come to the atypical absence status. The Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and other severe neurological problems. Seizures are often generalized, and often they are accompanied, associated with other seizure types like seizures. And then often it is difficult to distinguish absence status from the baseline impairment. And seizures are often refractory. Typically, it shows slow spike and wave and 2 cycles per second discharge. And often the background is also abnormal in between. So this is a typical EEG of a 30-year-old woman with a mental retardation, with a history of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and altered mental status. EEG shows slow spike and wave and discharge. So coming to the other types of status epilepticus, non-convulsive status, the primary generalized epilepsies, we have as many types of primary generalized epilepsies as their status epilepticus. For example, juvenile abscences, eyelid myoclonia with abscences, perioral myoclonia with abscences, idiopathic generalized epilepsy, phantom abscess. All of them can have a status. A typical example is this patient with G1 syndrome, who is now 40-year-old with eye blinking. And his actually onset of seizures was in childhood with absences. Then he developed myoclonic and tonic-clonic seizures in adolescence. He was frequently being hospitalized with myoclonus and generalized convulsions in adulthood. And then he was brought to the emergency room with confusion and eyelid myoclonia. EEG shows a flurries of generalized spike and polyspikes. So these are the generalized non-convulsive status epilepticus. Let us come to the focal non-convulsive status epilepticus. So basically, these are the conditions which are difficult to recognize because sometimes you may not think it is a seizure at all. They resemble focal neurological data, aphasia, and then either could be regional or focal non-motor deficits may appear. And sometimes they do not look like a seizure at all. So in the new classification, the complex partial status is now called as focal onset non-convulsive status with altered awareness or responsiveness. It is also called epileptic-related state, where patients are often confused. They have a very busy, fluctuating behavior. They may be catatonic, often unresponsive. There can be an occasional motor signs like automatisms. It could be recurrent or continuous. They often have a prior history of epilepsy, and probably in elderly it could be a vascular disease. It will go on for months and very difficult to treat. So this is the typical EEG of the patient with who is unresponsive, staring, automatism. These two strips are from the left hemisphere. You can see that the continuous recording. You can see the seizure emanating from the left temporal, anterior temporal, and gradually showing evolution in the form of increased amplitude of the discharges and spreading to the adjacent areas. And then this is a typical complex partial status. Oh, coming back, this is a status with altered awareness. So coming back to the partial seizures, status, where the patients are fully conscious. For example, in the simple partial sensory status epilepticus, where patient persistent sensory seizures without motor accompaniment. It could be like an abdominal distress or non-specific fear. And then, unfortunately, what happens is the EEG sometimes may not pick up the abnormality because the seizure focus is very deeply placed and not accessible to the surface electrodes. That could be again a psychic status, where this is an example of a 41-year-old female who presented with mild confusion. She did not answer questions but could follow most commands. Speech is bizarre, and then she is repeating some gibberish talk. And this is a EEG continuous right mid-temporal Polish spike and sharp waves. So another presentation of non-convulsive status could be deterministic state, transient epileptic amnesia. It's a pure amnesia where other cognitive functions are relatively well preserved. Often occurs in older people with prior history of epilepsy and then long-term memory deficits. Another occipital lobe non-convulsive status, usually again uncommon, but often the presentation is of hemianopia, cortical blindness, nystagmus, and visual hallucinations. So you can see this is the EEG of this patient who is seizing, 18-year-old boy, and with simple partial status epilepticus of occipital lobe origin. He complains that he's seeing red and green circles in the left field. You can see the rhythmic discharge in the right occipital area. And then these are EEGs. The focus is often very deep, placed, inaccessible to surface electrodes. You may not pick up in the surface EEG. Like for example, in the study, in 10 patients, only 2 patients with surface EEG could pick up the abnormality. And the alternate means that you could do a SPECT. If you can see this patient with occipital lobe seizure, a SPECT during the seizure, you can see the right occipital focus being lit up because of hyperactivity. The SPECT is lighting up the area. Another way of demonstrating it is deep electrodes, placing deep electrodes and recording the seizures. So euphasic status epilepticus is another presentation where patients are purely aphasic during the presentation without confusion. It could be a fluent aphasia, non-fluent aphasia. It can go on for weeks, often mistaken for stroke, but the MRIs are often normal. This factors include diabetes mellitus and most without epilepsy. And then this is an example of a 14-year-old woman who arrived at the emergency department with inability to speak. Examination demonstrated she was just saying few words with the dysarthria, but can follow commands. And then it looks like an anterior aphasia. There is no weakness or no focal deficit. And this is the EKG. You can see this patient's left temporal region showing what look like a lambda waves, but in fact they are the rhythmic waves of an active seizure. And then this patient received intravenous lorazepam, and then the aphasia resolved, and EEG seizure activity also resolved. You can see a single spike discharge. And then there are a number of studies of aphasic status epilepticus in which 9 patients with left hemispheric lesions were demonstrated with 5 tumors aphasia was the only manifestation, and then it was intermittent in some patients. And then some of them showed 30-minute EEG only demonstrated the abnormal only just 5. Others needed more prolonged recording. The lesson is that a routine recording of 30-minute recording may not demonstrate abnormalities, only others need probably continuous monitoring. And then once the anti-epileptic medication is given, the aphasia will resolve, and so also the discharges. So again, parietal lobe also can have a non-convulsive status, predominantly in the form of sensory symptoms like paresthesia, numbness. Sometimes patients complain of pain, erythematogenesia, Ellen hand syndrome, hemispatial neglect syndrome are some of the presentations of the non-convulsive status epilepticus. Unless your threshold of suspicion is very low, you don't suspect that this could be a non-convulsive status. These are the example of a 80-year-old male left-handed woman who was brought to the emergency room with confusion, and then she was not using her left hand, though she had very good strength. She was inattentive to the left visual field. She did not recognize her own left hand, and then of course her language functions are completely normal. There is no motor or jerking. Stroke services thought there is an embolic right atrial stroke, but the MRI was normal. And when the EEG was on day 2, there is a marked voltage suppression, and subsequently EEG is demonstrated brief electrocardiographic discharge. And there is a dramatic resolution of all the deficits with IV levetiracetam. So this is again another patient with aphasic status. He had a surgery for subdural hematoma with temporal lobectomy in the past, and an excellent seizure control with levetiracetam and valproate. But when levetiracetam was stopped because of mood swings, this fellow had confusion and then started hitting the nurse in the ward. And then he was inattentive to the left visual field. They were not responding to auditory cues. He was not touching the foot on the left side. And then this was the CT scan showing an old subdural hematoma, temporal lobectomy. And then the EEG showed lateralized epileptiform discharges in the left hemisphere, which went on to develop an acute seizure, rhythmic discharges suggestive of seizure activity. So these patients' continuous EEG demonstrated nearly constant sharp waves and slow waves in the left temporal region. Levetiracetam, phenytoin, and lateral lacosamide, though all were introduced slowly, and then electrographic seizures complete resolved, and patients' neurological deficit also completely resolved. So these are again manifestations last longer. Actually, there is no correlation between the EEG records and then the duration of the seizures. They don't have a strong correlation. As I told you, the short recordings of 30 minutes do not pick up abnormalities in all patients, and they need a continuous EEG monitoring. So just to sum up what you have done with the classic, these are all probably benign non-convulsive status epilepticus in the center. These patients are fully conscious, and majority of circumstances we can abort their non-status with IV intravenous and non-sedating anticonvulsants. Probably absent status and de novo absent status do not have any long-term sequelae, but some patients with complex partial status have prolonged memory loss, but all of them of course have an underlying focal lesion. So let us come to the last one, non-convulsive status in patients who are very critically ill and comatose. And then these are various synonyms that are used: non-classic status, subtle status epilepticus, as I told you, patients who have been on generalized convulsive status epilepticus, they start seizing, but they do not regain consciousness. Normally, patients with generalized chronic convulsive status, once the IV anticonvulsants abort the seizure activity, they should regain their consciousness in 20 to 30 minutes. But these patients with subtle status will continue to remain unconscious, and EEG will continue to demonstrate the seizure activity. And then these also called electrographic status, non-convulsive status epilepticus in coma, or non-convulsive status epilepticus in sick patients. So just to give you a flavor of the etiology of various etiologies of non-convulsive status in patients who are critically in neurological ICUs. These are the various conditions for neurological conditions like traumatic brain injury, intracerebral hemorrhage, and then subarachnoid hemorrhage, and CNS infection from the various series. These dark bars represents the patients who have normal convulsive seizures, and then the dark, the hatched bars represents those who exclusive non-convulsive seizures. You can see about 20 to 40% of patients have non-convulsive seizures, and another 10 to 20% have non-convulsive seizures exclusively. So this is the situation neuro ICU. It's not uncommon to find them in the non-neuro ICUs like medical ICU, surgical ICU, where patients are unconscious, and then they too have prolonged continuous EEG monitoring. They have non-convulsive seizures. Is very important. It's very difficult for them because they are often in medical and surgical ICUs, and these doctors are not equipped to identify these conditions. So the common conditions which cause non-convulsive etiologies in non-convulsive status include infection, toxic metabolic encephalopathy, epilepsy-related brain tumor, post-neurosurgery, subarachnoid hemorrhage, traumatic brain injury, intracerebral hemorrhage. So these cartoons demonstrate that the patients who have a seizure activity at least less than 20% per hour on continuous EEG monitoring have a less dysfunction measured at the end of 3 months compared to those who have a very long, more than 20% per hour seizure burden. They have a high sequelae subsequently. So the longer the seizure burden, the greater is the decline, which also is demonstrated in the high MRS score at the end of 3 months, and also low cognitive scores. So these non-convulsive status epilepticus allowed for longer periods of time will have their own sequelae. So most of the ICU patients have the seizures which are seen outside. Clinical seizures only represent the tip of the iceberg, and most of the seizures are, of course, non-convulsive seizures. And then but the Kaplan identified 23 patients in the emergency room with non-convulsive status, and he reviewed their original admitting diagnosis. They were metabolic encephalopathy, post-ictal state, intoxication, psychiatric illness, hyperglycemia, aphasia. These are the various diagnoses with which they were admitted into the ICU, and subsequently long-term monitoring demonstrated all have them and non-convulsive status. So the most important, when to suspect non-convulsive status epilepticus. So when patients with generalized chronic status stop seizing but they are not getting up, which you probably interpret as post-ictal state, but it's not post-ictal. This is a continuous subtle status, and they should be treated as aggressively as convulsive status. So in diminished alertness in post-operative patients in neurosurgical ICU, and again, strokes are small, seen on the MRI, but patient looks worse. The patient does not respond. Acute onset of loss of consciousness, fluctuating cognition, impaired meditation with very subtle signs, motor signs like myoclonus and nystagmus, and episodic staring, aphasia, automatism, self-perseveration, aphasia without a structural lesion on the MR, acutely altered behavior without other explanations, particularly elderly who are benzodiazepines which are withdrawn. These are the situations I think is strongly suspect non-convulsive status, and then start investigating. So as I told you, EEG is a very important tool in diagnosing non-convulsive status. So Salzburg demonstrates criteria. You can see that if you have a clinical suspicion of non-convulsive status, you do EEG, and if the EEG discharges are more than 2.5 seconds, label them as non-convulsive status. And then if the frequency is less than 2.5 seconds, then you need additional evidence in the form of typical spatial temporal evolution or clinical phenomena like twitching or automatism. And the third thing is that if intravenous benzodiazepines like producing improvement in both clinical and EEG status, as non-convulsive status. But is only EEG improves, but the patient does not improve, or the EEG shows fluctuations without definite evaluation, that probably is non-convulsive status. Lightingral concluded that these criteria are very high diagnostic accuracy and excellent internet agreement, so making them suitable for implementation in clinical practice. The treatment implications include, so this is a demonstrate the graphic representation of the relationship between the urgency of treatment and morbidity of the status. Convulsive status has the highest morbidity and then need urgent treatment, and then followed by non-convulsive status, non-convulsive seizures. So it's important not only make the type of status and also etiology. In the generalized convulsive status, the type is very obvious because they are secondary. But what is important is determining the etiology is very crucial because the etiology determines the ultimate prognosis. For other type of status like absence, myoclonic status, type identification also important. So generalized refractory generalized chronic status is often treated very aggressively. So also the cycle status, as I told you, is done seriously and warrant the same treatment. They need more benzodiazepines, propofol, and probably need EEG guidance like this. Whereas patients with non-convulsive status, if it is absence, simple partial, complex partial, benign myoclonic, they need not be treated aggressively. They probably need non-sedating anticonvulsants like Cobenfy, valproate, levetiracetam, lacosamide. But whereas the other seizures in comatose patients, non-convulsive seizures will be treated. So to conclude, non-convulsive seizures are quite common in the ill, including those without non-brain disease, especially if they're comatose or they have prior seizures. So most seizures in the ICU are non-convulsive. More than 50% of patients are purely non-convulsive seizures. As I repeatedly keep telling, 30 to 60 minutes monitoring. And usually they have some kind of a subtle, a prior history of seizures is very important, and subtle clinical motor symptoms like myoclonus, twitching of the angle of mouth. They often give a clue, sometimes epileptic nystagmus, hippus. These are the things which give a subtle clue that this could be a non-convulsive status. What is important to realize is that there is extensive evidence and that seizures, though non-convulsive ones, are harmful to the brain, especially when superimposed on the acute brain injury. They are associated with increasing mass effect, metabolic crisis, hippocampal atrophy, worse short and long-term outcomes, including quality of life and neurological worsening and lateral epilepsy. Again, there's a dose response, which means that the longer the seizures last, the greater will be the seizure burden. So I conclude saying that non-convulsive seizures are rather common and they are very difficult to identify because they do not follow the same pattern. The third thing is the EEG, which is supposed to be very helpful in making a diagnosis, is not always because the surface electrodes may not pick up those deep foci, and probably you need either depth electrode study or sometimes a SPECT to recognize them. And more importantly, they need a long-term monitoring. And some of these non-convulsive status, which there is no impairment of consciousness, probably they can be treated with less aggressively with non-sedating anticonvulsants. But those patients who are unconscious, they probably need to be treated aggressively. Their underlying medical condition is often very serious, like meningitis or intracerebral traumatic brain injury. They also need to be treated simultaneously along with seizures. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. You gave excellent review of the non-convulsive status epilepticus. It's a total comprehensive study which helps the postgraduates very much. There is 10 minutes time. You can take few questions.
Sure.
We still have 15 minutes time, ma'am. We can take questions and go for discussion, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions? Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Stroke, when it is not appropriate for the scan, you have to suspect non-convulsive status epilepticus.
Yes.
So that means even hemiparesis also can present like a status non-convulsive.
Yeah. Basically, when you say a patient with a stroke is unresponsive, you expect that this patient has a very large infarct in the dominant hemisphere.
Yes,
So
sir.
small infarcts in the dominant hemisphere and infarcts in the non-dominant hemisphere do not alter the consciousness. So if you have a stroke and you see an MRI in a patient whose infarcts are relatively small, and which you don't expect the patient to have an altered sensorium, and then that is a situation probably you suspect this patient to be altered sensorium and non-convulsive status, provided the metabolic parameters are normal. Of course, as you know, patients with diabetes, when stroke can have a hyponatremia or
Yes.
uncontrolled diabetes, provided all these metabolic parameters have been taken care of, and you don't find anything else to account for their altered sensorium, you need to strongly suspect these patients have probably non-convulsive seizures and probably confirm it by EEG and then treat appropriately.
Okay, sir.
We still have some time, ma'am. Another 10 minutes. If anybody wants to take questions, they can take.
Yes, postgraduates, you have a question in the theory, in the duties, you need to see. So,
Actually, because there is sufficient time, I
mm.
would like all the delegates again to because I have probably hurried through this slide.
Sir, voice is not audible.
Because I have hurried through this slide,
Uh,
and this is very important for the postgraduates that
Yes, sir.
these Salzburg criteria are very important because the EEG is very important in the diagnosis of non-convulsive status. And as you know, because clinically the suspicion is there, but unless we have EEG support, we cannot make a definitive diagnosis. So what is important is that when the EEG shows the flip form discharges of frequency more than 2.5.
Sir, voice is not audible.
Okay, I'll just increase. Actually, I have put my voice. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now audible
Yeah,
very clearly.
yeah. See, if the frequency of the elliptic form discharges on the EEG is more than 2.5 cycles per second, you can take that as non-convulsive status without any ambiguity. But if the seizure discharge is less than 2.5 seconds, 2.5 seconds per second, you need additional evidence. The evidence could be number one, in the form of a typical spatiotemporal evaluation. I've seen one patient, I've shown you one patient with non-convulsive temporal epilepsy or complex partial status, where the EEG showed an evolution from the left temporal region, anterior temporal region to the entire hemisphere. You need that kind of evolution. The second is the patient should have at least a clinical manifestation like an automatism, facial twitching, nystagmus. You have that kind of ictal phenomena along with this EEG abnormality, then probably you can take it as non-convulsive. And the third is that when you do intravenous lorazepam, both EEG and clinical improvements there, then you can take it as a confirmation of non-convulsive status. But there are certain things, if the frequency is less than 2.5 seconds per second, but if the response to the IV diazepam or lorazepam is only EEG wise, but there is no clinical improvement, or EEG only shows a fluctuation clinically, and EEG wise shows only fluctuations without a definite evolution, you can know it as a possible non-convulsive status. And these are the what's called Salzburg criteria, which have a very high diagnostic accuracy and excellent internet measurement, and are very suitable for implementation in practice. And then I think this is only possible if you have a continuous EEG monitoring, which is not available in many centers. I think probably, but the treatment of non-convulsive status cannot be very effective without this facility of continuous EEG monitoring. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, sir. Any questions?
We still have 5 minutes, ma'am. We can take questions, ma'am.
Sir, how can we distinguish complex partial status and de novo absence status?
Yeah, as I told you, it's very difficult, as I told you, but I think de novo status often occurs in elderly. De novo status occurs in that slide. De novo status occurs in elderly. Often there is no passive step seizures, and then de novo status occurs in the elderly, and then these patients don't have any prior history seizures, and there are often a history of taking benzodiazepine for sleep and anxiety, and then there is several withdrawal, and of course the EEG shows typical either it could be idiopathic generalized epilepsy, or it could be the patients be having a history of old stroke, and then benzodiazepine withdrawal will produce that kind of activity. Whereas patients with the complex partial seizures, often they have a past history of epilepsy, complex partial seizures, and then I think they are confused, dizzy, fluctuating behavior. course, the ultimately thing is that they can belong to any age group. Complex partial status patients often belong to any age group, and then they have a past history of complex partial seizures, and how it differentiate between the two. But ultimately, EEG is very helpful because invariably the late onset absence seizures D1 status, invariably the EEG will be normal and will be helpful.
Okay, sir.